Hello and welcome back to another episode here on Wargame Hammer, where today we're talking about improving painting. I've been painting miniatures since I was a child, starting with Airfix kits and moving on to stuff like Space Crusade, where this little guy here first arrived into my collection. This is a Chaos Android, which you might know these days as a Necron, and this was one of my first ever painted models, if not the first. I painted this guy not with standard paints, but with paint pens. They were, I think, some kind of early acrylic pens. They're very shiny, they've got a very glossy finish to them, but it helped me get into the idea of painting miniatures. And I didn't do a great job. He does look shiny and a bit of a mess, but he is one of the first ones that I ever painted, and I'm happy that I've still got him. This is where I started, and it got miniatures painted and onto the board, which was a very big thing. I was actually painting some of them while playing games. That's the kind of level I was at. I was eager to get something that didn't look just like plastic. So that's what I ended up with. Since then, I've definitely improved. Now, I want to talk about how to improve. And it honestly all comes down to time, practice, having the right level of magnification if you want to do details, and thinning your paints. Those are the four, that's all you need. Time and practice, they're the main ones. Nothing good is done fast. Yes, get things done and don't worry about perfection, but take the time where it's needed. And it's finding that balancing act, which is going to be the big thing that is part of practice. Practice makes perfect is the old saying, and you know what? It's true. I have spent many, many years now, since I was a child, literally, and I'm like in my mid-40s now, so I've done this a while, working out what works for me and trying to improve on the bits that I think I can improve on. You can't be perfect at everything, but you can get to quite a high level of skill in a lot of different things if you put the time into it. And that's what I did. So I came along to 5th edition of Warhammer 40,000, and with enamel paints that I've been using for many years and got my techniques down pretty well with those paints, started painting little orcs and space marines. And I did a decent job for the time. My hands weren't that steady at the time. I was on a lot of medication at the time, and it caused my hands to be a little less steady than they are now. But, you know, sometimes you have to take it and get better and then get on to the next bit. So I was painting them as best I could, and he's come out quite well. However, he still has a shine to his skin, so you can still see that little bit of glossy shine coming through from the originals to what we got now. But you might notice that I've used a lot more matte paints this time with the enamels. Matte enamel is an interesting thing, because now I've got leather effects that are matted down, like the old leather style, on his trousers and his backpack and stuff like that. So he's starting to look pretty good. And this is what I mean about practice and learning what works for you. Matte paints work a lot better on miniatures than gloss does, unless you're really going for a certain shine, such as on weapons. A weapon that glints always looks pretty damn good. Although, if every weapon glints, maybe it's not as special. Or all of the weapon glinting. I've been experimenting with stuff like that for a while. Dulled down parts of weapons and then highlights that shine look really good. And it's techniques that work for your style as well. You'll learn as you go through your own particular style and what works for what you want out of your miniatures. Not everyone wants the same thing. Some people want all their miniatures to look really used, really dirty, really grimy, like they're in the middle of a battle. Other people want them to look pristine, like their armor was polished before they went into battle and they've just got to the battle and they haven't yet got grimy. perfectly fine either way, whatever works for you. That's what I'm talking about with finding what is your style and what you're wanting from it. You will work it out as you go, and that's part of the time and practice as well. But I didn't stop there, because then I went on and painted stuff like this. This is Count Binface, and for this one I was going for, what if I can get a proper black and white look to make him look as if he's some kind of 1950s or 1940s sci-fi figure. So he's entirely in black and white with contrasting paints. Not contrast paint. Contrast paint is a very specific thing, although he does have Nuln Oil on him to give those deeper recesses, and that's something I've started on in the last few years, using contrast paints to really go for highlighting detail. But the entire idea is that he's entirely in black and white against the base, which is red from Martian bases, really going for that sci-fi style. So I thought he came out quite well, but it's a very experimental thing, and your mileage may vary on whether you like that or not. I thought he came out quite well for the project I had in mind for him. And then, like I said, started experimenting with the contrast paints. I've gone on to acrylics. Binface and everything from 10th edition Warhammer onward has been with acrylic paints, which really work well for me, but always remember, just water down your paints so that they're not thick and goopy. You don't want thickness because it gets rid of detail. So I went on with that. So now we have here a figure who is done entirely in acrylics with some shiny highlights here and there, but not too many, along his weapons. Most of it's dull metal, some of it's shiny highlights, and then gone over with a variety of different contrast wash paints to give more detail and really get the depth and the creases in his clothes and stuff like that. Make him look like he's been at war for a while and dirty. And you might notice the base is a little bit off. It's not quite right. And that's because I experimented. I experimented with a ballast bond, it's called, for model railways. It's a glue that is very, very liquidy. And what it's done is turn the fiberglass that is on the base into almost a solid. And that's great if you're looking for something that will last. That's not going to go anywhere. I can hold this all day. I can handle him during a game, and that grass is not going to fall off. It's not going to move at all. It's basically solid. However, it does look a bit off, and it's an experiment. I'm not entirely sure whether it's what I want. It's very much like it's muddy and in a war, especially with the parts of the base that are still visible underneath, which, to be fair, I should have painted brown before I put the grass and the rocks onto it. But I didn't realise that the ballast bond was going to clump the grass together. And like I said, it's all an experiment. So as a result, I've got dark, almost black, greyish black ground instead of mud. And if it had been mud, perhaps this would have looked an awful lot more coherent and looked a bit better as a result. But like I say, experimentation. So I've been experimenting with basing and getting different textures and different feels. Things that are hard wearing but look good. And one style of texturing that I've gone for is on this, which is basically one of my best models I've ever painted. This is all about coming together and getting everything that I've done with learning how to paint all into one model. Lots and lots of different contrasting colours. So the base is grey, but I've gone over it with a highlight of blue, because this is all blue and supposed to be kind of made mostly of light and warp ethereal, ghostly kind of ectoplasm matter. So I thought maybe it's reflecting onto the ground. So I've got blue highlights to reflect this shining down. The guy is blue, but he's kind of skin instead of armour. So I've got a lot of blue on him, and then I've gone over with a blue wash, and then once that was dry, I've highlighted with a lot of white, so that it feels like parts of his skin are stretched and you can kind of see tension and potentially bone underneath. So he's got a lot of white bits in there as well. And then the metal is shiny to contrast with the bone on his horns and the more matte skin tone style of the skin. And I think it's come together quite well. So it's all about highlighting. I don't do edge highlighting. I know a lot of people do, but I personally don't. I prefer to go for a dry brush to highlight edges and things like that here and there, but also highlight certain parts of the model that are sticking out. So you get a highlight and a low light by using the contrast paints, and that's what I've gone for with this. This is basically the culmination of 30 years or more of painting, and I'm pleased with it, but there's still more I can do, especially on some of the highlights and the details. And that's where the final point that I want to bring in comes in. I could not do anything better than what I've done there without getting a magnifying glass so that I can really get in there on the details. And I did that. I've now got a head-mounted light and magnifying glass, which it really helps to enhance my ability to see the details. I'm getting on a bit. I'm in my mid-40s. I can't focus in as well as I probably could as a child without getting a lot of eye strain. This guy caused eye strain. This is literally the best I can do with my fading, getting aged eyesight. So I enhanced it by getting magnifying glasses. It's meant that I can paint for longer and I can paint better detail. And that is the next step up, and I'll probably show you that in a future video once I work out the best techniques and get in there with proper highlighting and extra details and things like that. But that's how I've done it, and I hope by explaining the development there, it's a little off the cuff. I do tend to not script these, and I'm trying to get little points across with demonstrations as I go. I hope I've shown the way things can improve, basically. I found a paint which really works for me, which is the acrylics over the enamels that I used to use. I've found techniques that work for me, and I've found a style that works for me. And I did this through painting for years and years and years. That is the one thing that I really want to press home. I started out like that. And I ended up like that by realizing that I needed to improve and just trying different things and keeping going. You don't get really good overnight. I haven't got there yet. I'm not saying that I'm really good. And certainly compared to what wins Golden Demon and other painting contests, I'm still amateur. But compared to where I was, it's a massive improvement. And even I can see that, even though I'm very critical about myself. So what I'm trying to get to come over in this is, if you're starting out, don't compare yourself to what people are doing when they win competitions, unless it's to find what they're doing that you want to try yourself. Definitely look at what they're doing, see if you can replicate it yourself, and that's how you improve. But don't go, oh, I can't do what they do, I'm no good. Because it took me 30 years to get from A to B on this. And that's just because sometimes it takes time. Maybe it'll come to you quicker. Maybe you're spending a lot more time painting than I was, and that's why it took me so long. But the point is that you do get there if you continue and try. And always be open to trying new things. Guys, it's really hot in here. I'm starting to melt. I'll see you next time. I hope this has been useful. Take care. Let me know how your painting journey is going in the comments section down below. And I'll see you next time.